Hey, hey, what do you say? Welcome to episode 3 of the Strange and Deadly Show. Well, you're stuck with us so far, and we appreciate it. Look at you out there. You look beautiful, you look radiant. Are you ready for a good time? I know I am, and I know my friend is too. Well, I'm Chris Clayton, and I'm joined by my friend...
Tom Elliott.
Tom, how are you doing, sir?
I'm very well, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all, but I must tell you that a little piece of me inside has died, thanks to having watched the two films that we're going to cover this week.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Are we starting to regret the Section 3 list mission?
I think I might be, but then I've been reading Chris Brown's book recently, the video Nasties Moment, and that's not a plug, by the way, because he's done nothing for us. But I've been reading that book recently, and I kind of feel like we got the better deal compared to him.
It's interesting you say that. I think at this point, there's always going to be the rough weeks, isn't there, and the better weeks. But there's some good films down the list, I think, once we stay the course.
Yeah, I think, well, that's I mean, there are bad films on this list, of course. And who's to say, perhaps two of them might be covered on this week's episode. But there are, like you say, really good films as well. We have Romero films on there, Argento films. So we have some classics, and I think what Chris had to deal with, I still think is a lot worse. I mean, he had like Love Camp 7 on there, and Night School, and Unhinged, films that really are right at the bottom of the barrel. So I think, you know, as much as it pains me sometimes to have to cover some of these movies, especially some of the ones that we're going to get to in future episodes, I still think that we've largely got the better deal.
Good, okay. So we'll stay the course on this one.
Yes, we will. Now, The Strange and Deadly Show. You may have heard me clapping there in the background. I did that. I'd only do that when I'm excited, Tom. The Strange and Deadly Show. Here we are on episode 3. Now, we've had 2 episodes, of course, that have gone, I can count, and we've covered 4 films. So it was Cannibal and Cannibals in the first episode, and Rabid and Scanners in the second. And what we're doing is we're knocking films off of that Section 3 list that we just mentioned, connected to the video Nasties. Now, am I right in saying, Tom, these are films that were given a guilty plea at the courts, but they were not convicted of anything?
I think that's the way it works, yeah. And they would be seized and destroyed, but no one ever went to jail about them, although some of the directors should have done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I actually think that some of the films should have been seized and destroyed. Not for, for any political reasons, just because they're bloody awful.
Well, yeah, let's not play our hand too soon.
Tom, what have we got planned for the show?
Well, like we said in the previous 2 shows, the way we organise this is we do double bills, and where possible, we make them thematic double bills. So this time round we've got 2 slashers, but they also share a bit of a theme in that they are school-based slashers, and they are final exam and graduation day, so at least in title they fit together quite nicely.
They certainly do. And also, they fit within the same period quite nicely as well. I mean, they both came out during the same year. So I think they certainly share that in common. And they're both low-budget slashers. So I think the theme works quite well this week.
It does. I think we're very much in that post-Friday the 13th era. I mean, that came out the year before, if I remember rightly. Yeah. And obviously post-Halloween as well. So everyone was jumping on whatever time of year, any holiday they could, and these are even jumping on school type events, so we're very much in that period where people were just using any excuse to make a slasher movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is where the oversaturation begins, I think. It's like any very popular genre. At some point, there's going to be too much of it, and there's going to be too many examples of it, and I think this is kind of where it begins. I mean, it took off very, very quickly, and it became oversaturated. I suppose by the time you get to 1983, 1984, by then there were so many slasher movies because they were very cheap, very easy to make. It didn't require a lot of money in order to put them together. All you really required was a killer, either an unseen killer or someone with a mask on, and just a bunch of low-paid amateur actors, and you could pretty much, make a slasher movie on a very cheap budget, and some of them were very successful. I would imagine, actually, that very few of them were successful versus how many were actually made.
Yeah, it would be interesting to sit down and look at a list of the slashers made at that time and how many do we actually remember. I imagine there's a ton that just don't see the light of day anymore.
I've seen a lot of slashers over the years, and And to be honest with you, most of them aren't very good. You know, there's only really, I would say, a handful of them that are genuine classics. You know, you mentioned Halloween, Friday the 13th, Black Christmas. I suppose you could argue is a slasher, but there are a lot of them that were absolutely terrible. They're good fuel, good fodder for people like us.
They are, and I think it is of interest to me, as someone who likes film, just to see these trends and so on. But slashers are almost seen, I think, as cinematic junk food, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're the films that you kind of think, I want to watch something that doesn't really tax my brain much, is a bit of fun. So you throw a slasher on, and like you say, a lot of them are of low quality. But it's strange that, you could argue it's Black Christmas that started it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the Barber movie that is very much a Friday the 13th prototype? I can't recall it off the top of my head.
Twitch of the Death Nerve, or I suppose Bay of Blood is probably the better title here.
That's very much in the slasher mould. But I think it doesn't matter what came first. I always think Halloween's the one that kicked it off. And it's a very well-crafted movie. Maybe a couple of shaky performances, but it's a great movie. What came after just turned into this sort of, like I say, cinematic junk food. So it's quite an odd way things developed.
Yeah, and there are definitely good examples of I think slasher movies, people who did a very good job with them, capitalising, I suppose, largely on the success of Halloween and then Friday the 13th. I think that Halloween is a great example of what you can do with very little blood, but still craft something very suspenseful. The first film that we're going to get to tonight, I think, tries to do something very similar and probably doesn't accomplish that quite as well. Do you want to go into that, Tom? Tell them about our first film of the night.
Absolutely. Well, this one's called Final Exam. It was released in 1981 and was written and directed by a chap called Jimmy Houston. The synopsis goes like this. We open with an amorous couple enjoying some private time in the safe haven of their car. Heading into the back seat to continue their intimacy, they're disturbed by something or someone outside. In a flash, a psychotic killer emerges from the shadows and descends upon the car, wiping out the couple as we fade into a new scene. It's almost time for final exams at sleepy Lanier College, and the mood is positive as the students prepare for their upcoming summer vacation. We meet our lead characters at the college, the archetypal final girl Courtney, played by Cecile Baghdadi. Wow. The nerdy Radish, played by Joel S. Wright.
That's a vegetable.
Blonde bombshell Lisa, played by Deanna Robbins. And jock pranksters and Gamma Delta members Mark and Wildman, played by John Fallon and Ralph Brown respectively, in addition to others. Gamma Delta, the big fraternity on campus, is known for playing pranks, and we soon see one of those in action as a group of masked men exit and proceed to shoot and noticeably kill several people on campus. Honestly, that happened. It transpires that this was, in fact, a prank. What's not a prank, however, is the presence of a mysterious person driving a black van around the campus. Wearing a green shirt and blue jeans, he prowls the college in search of victims. With a butcher knife in hand, this killer, played by Timothy L. Rayner, begins to take out several of the students, whittling the group down to only one person, the amiable Courtney, who now has to fight for her life one-on-one against a maniac who kills with no rhyme or reason and who simply won't stop coming.
Don't you lock your door?
What could happen to me?
Famous last words.
Why are you so apprehensive? When are you going to realize that the whole world isn't made of psychopaths skulking about?
But they are out there. They do exist. People are killed every day for no reason at all. Perfect strangers wake up in the morning and decide, I think it's a good day to snuff somebody. And there are people who eat in our restaurants with us, use our highways, and vote for the president, which probably explains something about him, too. I'm not paranoid. I'm just facing unhappy facts.
So will you please stop it? Because I don't think it's cute like some people might.
Sorry, what's wrong with you?
I'm sorry. I'm just tired.
So, final exam. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Where do you begin with Final Exam? You know, it's just... I mean, dear, you talk about lethargic pacing. This has it. It's funny, the Wikipedia entry for this film, it says at the top there, obviously it was written by somebody who's a fan of the movie, if such people exist, who said there that the film tries to focus on characters and solid pacing. Solid pacing? My arse solid pacing. It's so boring. I knew about half an hour into it that it wasn't going to get any better. I knew about an hour into it. I mean, look, Tom, you know me. I'm not somebody who makes wild declarations or statements, but I knew about an hour into this movie that I hated the human race. I wanted the human race actively wiped out, if it would mean that it would get rid of the director and the stars of this movie at the same time. I just absolutely found it just a torrid, awful experience, and that's me.
Well, like you say, we start out with a kill scene. It's a very quite vanilla kill scene, and there is no real suspense involved. At one point, the killer just sort of walks into shot in a way that's supposed to, you know, when you think of Michael Myers walking into a shot or being in the background in those early scenes in Halloween, it's like bang, and it's quite a suspenseful thing. Here it's just like some dude just, you know, going to Chippy or something, he's just walking past. And then after that there is nothing, absolutely nothing for a whole hour, and it's just these kids who are pretty uniformly terrible actors, just talking and hanging around the campus.
It's funny, going back to that opening scene for just a second, the reason I do that is because apparently the director, Jimmy Houston, he wanted to avoid horror cliches. Well, the amorous couple in the car is one of the biggest ones there is.
It was like Michael Jackson's Thriller or something.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, except I think Thriller is probably better acted.
Definitely.
So yeah, and then you mentioned the dude, the killer. I mean, I suppose we'll get to him in a little while, but you're absolutely right. We have a bunch of young actors here. Again, Jimmy Houston, his focus here didn't want to rely on blood and gore. That was one of the first major points that he wanted to put across. What he wanted to do was rely on the characters. The problem is, there are no characters, as far as I'm concerned. There are people talking. I don't think there's a single actor in the movie, maybe not even the killer, who has any presence on screen whatsoever.
No, the one guy who I quite liked, and that's because he's just this dorky little kid, and I imagine in a different movie he would have been quite good, is the guy who played Radish.
Radish, yeah, I agree.
You know, he seems like a likeable kid. In some sort of teen comedy, he probably would have been ideal. But in this, he's quite fun. But it's more like you're kind of amused by him rather than his character has anything really going on, or any of the characters do. Because that jock dude, you know, the one who's talking about chemistry at the beginning, it's such a bad little piece of dialogue. It's really awful. Maybe we'll have to pull out that clip and put it in here, because it sums up that first hour. The way people speak to each other, the way people act. It's unfortunately, it rarely goes to the point where it's so bad it's funny, but I think it does sometimes.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
You ready for this?
Oh, I guess. Are you?
Oh, hardly. I only know about half of it, and that's the easy half. I mean, what do I have to take chemistry for anyway? I'm going into advertising.
Yeah, I know. Well, that is a problem with education. They do keep trying to teach you all that stuff.
Yeah, like chemistry. I hate chemistry. I mean, chemistry hates me. It's that simple.
Come on, it's really not that bad.
It's easy for you to say. But I have to make an 82 on this exam to pass the course. And if I don't pass the course, my parents stop making the payments on my car. I mean, this is serious. An 82, or else I have to walk. This is war.
Well, you can't just give up. You have to
Oh,
try
just stop before you tell me that quitters never win. I mean, I do not want to hear that. Because I'm a winner.
I mean, there are some timing issues as well, I've noticed, where characters will stop talking because they're anticipating another line that's coming through, and it's bad. It's not. It's actually, believe it or not, it's not the worst acting I've seen. I think that the acting in Jess Franco's Cannibals, or was it Cannibal? What was it? White Cannibal Queen.
Cannibals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think is probably worse. Having said that, that's dubbed over. These are people actually speaking English, and it's bad. And also, you've got you mentioned there Cecile Baghdadi. What a name! Who plays Courtney, who is the final girl, basically. There are going to be spoilers here, by the way, guys, but this movie is, 30 odd years old. I just think she has nothing going on at all. For most of the film, she just sits there kind of grinning at people, and there's not a lot going. She's no Jamie Lee Curtis, for example. So, and I think you've got to have someone to be invested in. I feel like I would have been invested more in Radish. But, because he has this sort of thing going on where he's aware of psychopaths and killers, and he has a bit of a thing about them.
That's right.
But they don't really do anything with that, do they?
No, they don't. And that's kind of the par for the course for the whole film, because our jock guy, who does the chemistry speech at the beginning, at first seems like quite a nice, likeable chap. He has that conversation. He's a terrible actor.
Yeah.
But he has that conversation. But then next minute, he's this jock arsehole, There's no consistency with any of the characters. But I think you'll probably agree, these are things you can probably forgive if the movie is a whole lot of fun. If it's a splatterfest, if it's got some energy about it.
Yeah.
There's probably films on our list of films that we like where there's acting as bad as this and dialogue. Maybe not dialogue as bad as this, but you know what I'm saying. And I think that's where it is. There's no energy there. There's nothing going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is. Look, I'm not looking for Oscar caliber acting when I watch a slasher movie. I'm certainly not. I think there are some people who are better at it than others. I think what we've got here is bad acting. But then also, like you say, I can forgive that if the film is fun and energetic. For example, Pieces, which is a movie that I'm a big fan of, is ridiculous and makes no sense whatsoever. Terribly acted, but it's a tremendous amount of fun, and there's just no fun here. It's just been sucked out, and what you're left with is obviously you've got a director. He's directed and written the movie. He, I think, has ideas above his station. I think he wants to make a statement of some kind. But Jimmy Houston is not John Carpenter, and he's not a craftsman at the end of the day. And by choosing to focus on characters that aren't very good, and by choosing to largely leave the violence out of it, what you're left with is something that's just very slow and bland, I think.
Yeah, I think before we get to... Because you can pretty much just disregard the first hour of the movie, because nothing really happens. So I guess the meat of our conversation is when the kills start, does it really help the movie as such? But within that first hour was a moment where my mouth opened and I said, "What?"
Right.
And I think you'll know what I'm talking about. It's basically they're in their final exam, and all of a sudden a van pulls up outside, some masked men get out with automatic weapons and start mowing down students.
Yeah.
They then drag them back into the van and drive away. But it turns out it's just a prank. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
It's ridiculous, isn't it? It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, bear in mind, this is a decade before Columbine. Or I should say it's the previous decade. Of course, Columbine was in the mid-90s. And it's amazing to me how people actually take to it, how people react to it. Is at first, some of our lead characters, the girls, are terrified. And the terror disappears very, very, very quickly. Quite frankly, how a bunch of guys wearing balaclavas are able to... And especially knowing that it's a prank that comes from this specific fraternity, it's a Gamma Delta prank. Is what they've done is they've popped out of the van, they're shooting fake bullets at a couple of the guys who are part of the fraternity, and then they drag their presumably dead bodies in. Turns out they're not dead at all, and they're all in the van drinking beer and driving off. In a real world, they would all be in prison by now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No question. It doesn't matter whether you're firing a fake gun or not. You fire any kind of gun on a school campus and you're going into prison very, very quickly indeed. Here, I've never seen anything treated more lightly. It's a remarkable moment.
It is. Just if there's one thing worth watching the film for, it's probably just to see how ludicrous this is. Because like you say, okay, it's a different time, but it can't have been that different that these kids would just get... I don't even think any cops turn up. One cop turns up later on, and I think the only reason for this scene being in there is so that later on, when the girl calls the police, they can say, no, it's just a prank because this happened earlier on. That seems to be the whole reason for it being there. But yeah, quite one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah, I mean, they send one sheriff over, which is remarkable in itself. A van of bad guys has turned up shooting guns at students on a college campus, and you send one slightly overweight sheriff over to deal with the problem. It just is. It's very unrealistic. And also that whole scene when the sheriff turns up and he's talking to some of the kids, because he's worked out at this point that it's a prank. He's been told so by Radish. Actually, Radish is the one who called the police in the first place. And then we have this scene of dialogue where he's talking to the coach, and then the groundskeeper comes along and he's talking to the groundskeeper. I don't care about any of this.
No,
it's just fluff, isn't it?
It is, and they just play it down so much. Oh, they're just kids having a prank. Remember what you used to do when you were younger?
I used to embark on a school shooting every week, Tom.
Phoning bomb threats, all that good stuff.
Yeah,
but
it's okay. Terrorism is treated very lightly these days, Tom. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, it is a lark. It is a lark. But anyway, it is what it is. It's there.
Okay, so we've got the school shooting out of the way, such that it is. Why don't we talk about the killer in the movie? Because it's only interesting in as much as they really don't make any effort whatsoever to disguise him, to hide his identity. There's no mystery about him, really.
There is no mystery about him. His face is pretty much there to see all the way through. But even seeing that, who is he anyway?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, and look, spoiler warning again. Well, what we come to find out is that the guy is just a guy. He has no backstory. He has no connection to any of the characters. He's just a guy who wants to kill people. Now, you could argue that the same thing could be said of Halloween, for example. Before we got the sequels, Michael Myers is just a guy. But I think the difference is, in something like Halloween, because you've got a director who is really, really good at what he does, there's a tremendous amount of suspense there. And in that film, there's always the presence of Michael Myers in the background somewhere. There's an ominous feeling of evil. Whereas here, it's just a guy with a Davy Jones haircut, and a green top and blue jeans, walking around with a butcher knife. And there are times where he's sort of shown in the shadows a little bit, but most of the time you can see some of his face. Throughout the movie, I was trying to work out who he was. And I was originally thinking, well, maybe it's the coach who was wearing a wig. But then I would look at his body shape and I would think, well, no, it can't quite be him. But I just thought the coach character was so happy all the time that I thought there must be something wrong with him. And maybe that was sort of his alter ego, like another identity. As it turns out, it's just a guy. And I'm not going to say that the guy does a terrible job. It's just, again, it's a very bland, characterless killer.
I think the thing with slashers is they come into usually two kind of different varieties. You've got the whodunit slasher, which we'll come on to in the next movie. Or you've got the iconic slasher, where it's a Michael or a Jason or whoever, where the killer has some sort of twist to them, some sort of unique identifying factor. This is just a guy who, like I say, he might as well have just been going to the chip shop to get a bag of chips and just thought, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to go and slaughter some kids.
Yeah.
Because there's just nothing there beyond that, And it's funny, I've looked up the actor on the web just to see who is he, and he actually looks quite scary now. He'd probably do a good job of it now, I guess he was just doing what the script said, and he was shot a particular way. It's not his fault that there was no backstory there or anything to it, but very strange thing. I've never seen something quite like it.
It's a strange choice, isn't it? I think what probably happened, Tom, is that they ran out of Savaloys at the local fish and chips, and he thought, I can't handle this. So he decided to kill a bunch of kids. And yes, it's unfortunate that Jimmy Houston... The thing about Jimmy Houston, I mean, I get the feeling that the guy doesn't particularly like horror movies, and I think that it was his decision to try and do something different with one. And I think he's failed here in just making something that's very bland. We speak about the killer, there's no mystery there. Now, we also mentioned previously that there's really no blood in there. I said it was a bloodless slasher movie. It kind of isn't. There's a tiny bit of blood in there. There's one kill in the movie towards the end where I think it's the character of Mark, who's the character you were mentioning, the jock guy, who changes very quickly. He's quite a nice guy at the beginning, and then suddenly, boom, he's this, this arsehole of a guy.
Yeah.
And he dies. I think it's the only kill in the movie that mirrors something that you might see in Friday the 13th, which is he's sort of running away from the killer, and he goes into this room, and the killer jumps out of I guess it's a garbage can, and puts a machete through his stomach. And that is, I would say that is the most graphic kill in the movie. It's not very graphic, but it is something. Then again, I don't know how the killer actually got in there in the first place, considering the place was locked down. There's I've noticed there are a couple of moments in this movie, I don't know if you agree with me, where the killer seems to be able to do things that are slightly unnatural, like he can be locked in one room and emerge from another room.
I think you're probably following it a bit more than me by that point.
Right.
I was really looking at my watch, so I probably missed it.
Oh, that's a shame. If I'd known that, I wouldn't have bothered concentrating on it either.
You know what? It's not that I wasn't concentrating. It's just that the film just seems to have evaporated from my mind.
Yeah.
Because what's there to hold on to?
It's super forgettable. Just super forgettable. I mean, do you think... Comparing this to Friday the 13th, which, as you said, came a year before this, 1980, do you think that the effect that film has, because it is gorier, and I think it's a much better film than this, of course. Do you think that because that's gorier, do you think we're comparing this unfairly to that?
I don't know, but the thing is, it's not the gore that's the issue, is it? Because, like you said earlier, Halloween is quite a bloodless slasher as well. Mm-hmm. But it's the suspense, it's the brutality of the kills that really sell that. And there's a couple of moments here. I'm not, let's try and look for the good in things, where I thought, okay, that's not a bad shot. There's a shot where the killer, someone goes into the gym. I think it's the other jock guy, the blonde one, Wildman. And he turns on the lights, and the killer's there under the light, sort of stood. And I thought, okay, nice shot. But I don't think it's so much comparing it because of gore and the lack of gore. I think the thing is, for me personally, if you don't have the talent to pull off the suspense, then you should probably put the gore in there and make it a bit of a splatterfest, a bit of a good time. And unfortunately, he did neither.
Yeah, that's it. I have to agree with you completely. I do think the film is not badly shot. I don't think it's ineptly made. I just think it's missing the elements that, like you say, if you haven't got the things that might make it a bit of a classic, like Halloween, where you've got a bit of craftsmanship and you've got a DP like Dean Cundy, for example, who shot Halloween, who's able to just to shoot really well, is able to compose shots really well. I think if you haven't got something like that, you've got to be fun. I think you've got to be fun, and you've got to move along at a swift pace. And unfortunately, I found this just a tremendous bore. At the beginning, I suppose I was a little bit harsh on it because it didn't upset me like White Cannibal Queen did, where I was just wanting to pull my hair out and smash my own teeth in with my fist. But I just think that there's just much better than this in the genre. And I just found it a waste of time. And I watched a Blu-ray print of it, a HD print of it, and I just sort of think, why on earth would you waste money on putting this in HD? It just is. It's experience that I've had, and I will swiftly move on and forget all about it, I think.
It's funny. I agree with you. It is a waste of time. It's not a good movie by any means. I've seen worse, but it's just so bland. But afterwards, I was kind of fascinated by who are these people? How did this get made? What happened to them? Has it got a cult following? All these sort of questions come into my head, and I was quite interested to see who they are and where this figures in their lives, And Joel S. Rice, who plays Radish, is actually quite a successful film producer now. He seems to specialize in these television movies, it seems, that focus on people with disabilities overcoming adversity. A few years ago, you would get a lot of films where, women would have illnesses and stuff and overcome them and things like that. His particular genre seems to be people with disabilities overcoming adversity in these television films. So
right.
It's not my area of expertise, unfortunately, so I can't comment on how good they are.
Cecile Bad Daddy is the lead, and she only ever did this movie. Whether they did theatre work afterwards or I cannot say. But as far as a feature film career, it was not to be for many of the people here.
What a shame.
Yeah, I'm quite disappointed. I would have loved to have seen a bunch of people just talking for an hour and a half again with nothing really happening, and then seeing the killer's face through the whole thing. They should have made more movies like that, Tom.
Final Exam 2. The final exam. I don't know.
Yeah, so if you want to buy this movie, if you want to buy it, don't do it. But if you want to, it is available on Blu-ray from Shout Factory under the Scream Factory label and on DVD through Scorpion Releasing. So it is available for you if you're an idiot.
Good. Okay. I don't think we need to say any more on that, do we?
No, I don't think we do. Right. So that's our first film covered, Final Exam. Now we're going to move on to the second one on this week's episode. And it's another slasher from 1981, directed by Herb Fried. It's called Graduation Day, and it was written by Anne Maurice, Herb Fried, and David Bourne. Believe it or not, 3 people wrote this movie. Quite surprising. So let me give you the plot summary of this one. Laura Ramstead is competing in Midvale High School's highly competitive track meet, with an adoring crowd looking on with pride as she races towards the finish line. She finishes the race in first place, but collapses almost immediately afterwards. Her friends and coaching staff run to assist her, but it's too late. She's gone into cardiac arrest, and she dies in the arms of her boyfriend, Kevin, played by Danny Murphy, as not the footballer, and surrounded by her friends and her pushy coach, George Michaels, played by Christopher George, because you got to have a faith, the faith, Tom. George Michael, you see?
Very good.
Thanks. We flash forward a few days later and witness the arrival of Laura's sister Anne, played by Patch Mackenzie, who is on leave from the US Navy in order to attend Midvale's graduation ceremony so that she might pay respects to her fallen sibling. Soon after, we meet Paula, a team member of Laura's, out for an early morning jog. As she runs through a park flanked by bushes, we see a strange figure dressed in a grey sweatshirt and black gloves observing Paula. The mostly unseen figure starts a stopwatch and begins running after Paula, catching up to her, slitting her throat, and then stopping the watch at around the 30-second mark, echoing the duration of the race in which Laura ran. Meanwhile, we learn more information about Anne. She's been in the military for many years, and she has returned to her hometown and is staying with her mother and her aggressive, drunken stepfather who resents her presence there. As Anne prepares for an emotionally heavy stay after the death of her sister, it becomes apparent elsewhere that someone devious is hanging around Midvale High School. Armed with bright red lipstick to mark off his or her victims on a school photo they keep hidden away, this shadowy figure is beginning to pick off members of the high school's running team, which comprises of Laura's friends. As each member of the team goes missing one by one, suspicion falls on several characters who all have a stake in the matter. Could the killer be Anne, seeking revenge for the death of her sister, who she feels was pushed to her limits by the aggressive Coach George? Could it be George himself, who sees red after he is blamed for the death of Laura, someone he considered to be his prize runner? Or could it be the comical Principal Giglione, played by Michael Pataki, who, while affable, seems to be hiding an abundance of pocket knives in the drawer of his desk, as well as a very curious-looking stopwatch?
I didn't come here to play games, Michaels.
And what'd you come here for? Point a finger at a killer? Well, go ahead. Everybody else in town has.
Maybe they know something.
They don't know nothing. All the years I gave them winners, they loved me. And one accident. One accident where a child gets a blood clot. And it's my fault. And I'm out of my ass.
I'd say you were getting off easy.
Listen, I didn't kill your sister.
Oh, no.
I loved her.
Loved you. You rotten bastard. You and your stupid track team, you pushed her and you killed her.
I didn't kill anybody. I give my life to Laura, to all my kids. Yeah, I pushed them. I yelled at them. But that didn't mean I didn't care for them. I spent 4 years with Laura. I molded her. I shaped her. She was precision. She was power.
Or could it be Mr. Tom Elliott? Was it you?
I must admit, after watching these two, I have had some homicidal tendencies, but anyway. So, graduation day. I've got to admit, if you watch Final Exam and then graduation day, it is a bit of a breath of fresh air after Final Exam. I'll give it that. But again, we're in this time, 1981, post-Friday the 13th, post-Halloween. I've got to admit, it still felt like a bit of a chore to me. It was better than Final Exam. There's a bit more going on. Some nice directorial flourishes here and there. Not particularly gory, but there's a bit of blood here and there as well. Seems to want to tick all the slasher boxes, if you like. There's boobs, there's a bit of blood, there's a mask, well, not a masked killer, although he does wear the mask a couple of times, I think. The fencing mask. At times it was okay. It sort of pulled itself a bit together towards the end for me, but I've got to admit, during the middle I was looking at my watch.
Yeah, I have to say, I guess I said it last week, but I had already seen Graduation Day. I bought it on DVD, the Troma release of it, many years ago, in the days when I used to peruse eBay looking for bargain bin DVDs, and I would blind buy a bunch of stuff, which I don't do so much nowadays. And I happened upon Graduation Day, and I happened to enjoy slashers, so I thought I'd give it a go. And I have to say, yeah, it's... I'll put it to you like this. Final Exam is not very good. Graduation Day is still not very good, but it's a bit better. Would you agree with that?
I would say so. I would call it okay. That's the best sort of the best kind of compliment I can give it. I mean, let's dig into some of the meat of it. I mean, in the beginning we have this setup where the girl has a heart attack or something. How did she die? I can't remember. Was it a blood clot or something?
Yeah, well, I said cardiac arrest, but I think it actually was a blood clot in the heart.
Yeah, and this sets off this whole sequence of events. I think it's a very Scooby-Doo kind of thing where we see the character who ends up being the killer for a short time at the beginning, then we don't see him again until pretty much the end. So it's very obvious, I think, who the killer is. But it just seems to be a bit muddled to me. We have this girl who comes home from the Navy or whatever. She goes home, she's got this abusive stepfather. We don't know why. He doesn't seem to like her. And I don't know, it just seems a bit muddled, a bit messy.
Well, it seems to me like they're trying to throw in a red herring wherever they can. I mentioned in the plot summary, there are a bunch of characters there who are all pegged for the killer. You're supposed to think, well, could it be that person? I think the stepfather is one of them. Anne is one of them because I believe when she's unpacking, she has the same sweatshirt and gloves as the killer. So does Coach George Michaels. So does Principal Giglione. So there are a bunch of people in there. It's very much, you mentioned when we were talking about Final Exam, the whodunit slasher. This is very much in that mould. I have to say, it's interesting, going back to what you said a moment ago about, you said that you found the killer very easy to guess and work out. I had completely misremembered who the killer was.
Oh, right.
When for some reason, I had it in my mind that the killer was Anne. And so throughout the whole movie, I'm like, yeah, it's you. I know it's you. And in actual fact, we're going to give it away now. The killer is Laura's boyfriend, the girl who died. It's her boyfriend, Kevin. And for some reason, I'd completely forgotten that. So I have to admit, going through and watching this, this was my second time around. Because the first time I watched it, I found it very forgettable. I guess it must have been very forgettable because I'd forgotten that the killer was Kevin. So in that respect, I was sitting there thinking, it's Anne, I know it's you. So I didn't have that's quite the same feeling as you as far as that goes. I think this film, what it does benefit from is it has a couple of touchstones in there, things that you and I, knowing that we love the stuff that we love. There are a couple of things in there, a couple of actors that we're very fond of. First of all is Linnea Quigley.
Oh, absolutely. She's always good to see Linnea Quigley and stuff.
Naked.
Well, usually because she's naked, yeah.
Exactly. And she's in here. This is one of her early roles. I think she'd done a few films. Don't Go Near the Park, I think she'd done before this. So she'd been in a few things. The reason she's even in this movie is because there's a blonde girl who is still in the movie, but has mostly been cut out. I don't know if she was playing the same character, Dolores, but she was definitely supposed to be playing the character that Linnea Quigley ends up playing. And what happened was this particular actress did not want to perform in nude scenes, did not want to strip off, and so they hired Linnea. She came in, took over the role, and what they ended up doing is largely cutting this other girl out of the film. She's still in there in places. I actually, to be honest with you, have not taken the time to look for her, so because I really don't want to examine every frame of this movie for a girl who might have been mostly cut out of it. And I think Linnea Quigley, is it Linnea or Linnea?
I always go Linnea.
Or is it Linnea? Who cares? So Linnea Quigley, I just always think she has great presence on screen. She's one of the great scream queens, I think.
She is. She always brings fun to things, Return of the Living Dead obviously is a classic. I interviewed Linnea Quigley a couple of years ago, actually. She is a lot of fun, to speak to as well, and I think that really comes across on screen. But yeah, it's good to see her here, and I guess the other guy we're going to talk about is Christopher George, right?
Absolutely. I mean, here's a guy who I think most of you guys out there who are fans of low-budget, obscure stuff will know Christopher George, especially if you're a fan of Lucio Fulci, because he starred in, of course, the Fulci classic City of the Living Dead. And it's a funny thing about Christopher George. He had a very long career, starred in lots of movies and TV shows. Funnily enough, what he's known best for now is the sort of final run of films he made leading up to his death in 1983. Very sadly passed away before his time. And I get the feeling he's not very happy about it, because in most of these horror movies he appears in towards the end, he looks like he doesn't give a fuck. But in a great way, where there's a lot of presence from the guy. I mean, like, he was in City of the Living Dead, The Exterminator, this film, Pieces, and Mortuary. And I just think he brings a sort of effortless cool to the whole thing.
I think so too. The thing with Christopher George for me is he was in all, these films near the end of his life, and he was obviously someone you could get on the cheap, I imagine. But he brings a certain gravity, and like you say, that presence. He's half tough guy, half hangdog, sort of pissed off, annoyed guy. He's got all these things going on. But if you have a role to fill for a kind of middle-aged guy who needs to have something about them, but you haven't got much money, it seemed Christopher George was your guy.
Yeah.
But no, he's great to watch.
He absolutely is. Going back to the story then, so trying to get into you said it was muddled, and I agree with you. I think one of the biggest mistakes they make is bringing in Laura's sister Anne, who's come back to pay her respects to her fallen sister, and they've quite obviously brought her in to be the lead character, if you like.
Yeah.
But she's really not in the film very much until the end. She's sort of in there a bit at the beginning, and then she goes to the school for the rehearsal of the graduation ceremony. She pops up again, you know, once or twice after that, you know, confronting Coach George. She believes that Coach George pushed Laura way too hard, and that's why she ended up dying when she was running the race. I really think that was quite a big mistake to bring somebody in who's obviously the lead and then really not do anything with her and just sort of leave us with these young characters, the members of the track team who are going to be killed off one by one. I thought that was a mistake because it's not grounding you in any particular character.
Absolutely. There's no through line there. What I will say is I like how she was introduced because quite early on in the days of the slasher, it's subverting a kind of Friday the 13th thing. I remember when the hitchhiker got into the car at the beginning of Friday the 13th and she's talking away to whoever is driving the car, but the person's not talking back and they end up killing her. And they do a sort of play on that here. I don't know whether it was deliberate. It seems to be. Whereas when Anne is getting driven by, was he a sailor or something? I can't remember. No, he wasn't. He was just a big fat guy.
Yeah, just
wasn't
a fat truck driver, yeah.
Yeah. And he's talking to her, but she's not talking back. And in my mind, that immediately says he's going to get it now.
Yeah.
And it turns out it wasn't. It was Anne. And she was just annoyed by him and then ended up, putting him in his place. So I like how she was introduced. But then, like you say, she goes so far and then disappears. But she was us. She was our sort of way through this, and she's gone.
I think that more could have been done with her because I don't think she's a bad actor necessarily. I don't think the acting in the movie is great, but I don't think she would have been a bad lead if they'd actually done more with her. So anyway, Anne aside, we've got our plot, which is basically that somebody is not very happy that Laura has died, and they're picking off the track team one by one, and then sort of marking them off on their high school photo with lipstick, and that's the general plot really as it goes along. There's somebody. I think they do a better job of making the killer a bit more mysterious here by, sometimes you don't see them, and then sometimes you see them wearing that, like you say, that sort of fencing mask. So I think that is more effective. And as far as the kills themselves go, like you say, there's a bit more blood. It's a bit more violent. There is, I think, a sort of ingenious use of an American football.
Yes, that's a good kill.
Yeah, which they plug a spike into and then ram it into this jock's stomach, which I think is a good kill. And there's another one where a guy is pole vaulting, and he ends up. He does it and he ends up landing on a bunch of spikes there, which I'm not sure how you wouldn't have seen those spikes coming, but before you even ran up there in the first place. But there you go. I think in general, I think it does a better job. I'll put it to you like this: I think it does a better job of being a slasher movie than Final Exam does, with all of those cliches included.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel that the fencing mask was that just incidental? Was that just a way of masking who the killer was as and when they needed to? Or were they trying to set him up as that's his thing, he wears the fencing mask? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm sort of in the middle of that. I think it could go either way. Because they don't use the mask enough to where I would think that they're trying to make that an iconic look. So I would tend to think that maybe that's just something they use to hide their identity. So I don't think it's as much it's not a hockey mask where it immediately becomes identifiable with that particular character. So I think it's probably the former rather than the latter. But it could go either way, couldn't it?
Yeah, I would hope it's a bit more incidental because it's not that great as a horror icon's kind of mask. I think it would be a bit rubbish. Could you imagine 10 films of a guy in a fencing mask? it just wouldn't happen. So yeah, maybe it's just an interesting play on things. I don't know how much the kind of referencing other things here or not. It'd be interesting to... I haven't dug into the special features on the Blu-ray. It'd be interesting to see what's there and what's said about these kind of things.
Yeah, what I tend to think is that a lot of these very low-budget slasher movies, they were capitalising on the success of Jason Voorhees and that iconic look, and Michael Myers as well. And so I think a lot of them were scrambling to have a masked madman. And therefore, I think they sort of picked something that might have looked a bit inventive. In actual fact, I think it's not... I don't find it particularly frightening, I have to say. No. I think... I find the Michael Myers mask, for example, sorry to harken back to Halloween so much, but it is my favourite movie. I find the Michael Myers... If somebody was standing in front of me wearing the Michael Myers mask, I think I would be terrified. Whereas if somebody was standing in front of me wearing a fencing mask, I think I would probably laugh first, then die.
If you're not suspenseful, then you need to be fun. You need to have that splatter, that titillation, that energy, if you like. And this does it better than Final Exam does, but it's still not quite there.
Yeah, it's still not very good. I think, watching it again, I think they're both very, very mediocre. I have to say that I found, the first time I watched it, which must be, 7 or 8 years ago, I found it to be quite forgettable. I'd forgotten so much of it watching it again. I didn't come away from it thinking very much more of it, other than the fact that, I actually watched it before Final Exam, so I had I guess I had the opposite experience to yourself, where I watched Graduation Day and okay, I've seen this before and I remember a few bits here and there, misremembered the killer, and so that was more of a surprise to me. So it was a slightly more enjoyable watch to me than coming to Final Exam, which I only watched yesterday, and that really was like, this is... I wish I'd started with this so that I could have gone up a bit rather than, sunk right back down. I have to talk about something, mate, that bothers me tremendously about this movie, and there is a long... It's actually the scene where Linnea Quigley is killed. But basically, Linnea Quigley is in the movie get naked, pretty much. But a byproduct of that also is that she's just very likable. I think she's one of my favourite scream queens, and so she's in there giving the role a bit of fun. Now during this scene, she's preparing to get off with her boyfriend, with a guy, and there's a school dance happening. But people who have seen this movie, they know what I'm going to talk about now, because it's actually a legendary scene, one of the more notable scenes in the movie. Many people say it's actually the scene that the film is best remembered for. And there is this band that plays at the high school dance, and they're called Felony. And they play this sort of early 80s hard rock song, but they all look like they've been pulled out of Spandau Ballet. So the look of it and the sound of it doesn't quite work. They're incredibly cheesy. One of the most 80s sounding bands I've ever heard or seen in an 80s movie. But the thing that annoys me the most is that the fucking song goes on for 7.5 minutes, Tom.
Was it that long?
Do you know what? I knew it was long, and I went on IMDb and somebody timed it. And the song goes on for 7.5 minutes. You're not in fucking Genesis, all right? You can't. All they do is they repeat the verse and the chorus over and over and over again for 7.5 minutes, and it plays through the whole scene. Some people seem to think it's effective in the scene. I think it takes away from the. I think it takes away from the suspense that could have been there, because Linnea Quigley is the only character who actually almost stands a chance of getting away, and is other than Anne, of course, the final girl later on, but she actually makes a good fist of trying to escape from the killer. And this fucking band are playing Gangsters of Rock in the background. That's the name of the song, and it made me want to punch my TV. I'm not a violent man, Tom, but there are exceptions.
I think you're going to want to punch me then after I say this. I love that scene. I absolutely do. I will give you that they repeat themselves too much to the point where you think the record's broken or something.
Yeah.
But if people say that this is the best scene in a movie, then I have to agree with them. I think it's a good chase. I think as a document of the time, with this shitty 80s band playing at a ridiculous sort of school party where people are roller skating and dancing, and she's getting chased around by a fencing mask guy. I thought it was great.
I hate you. I want to call in Chris Brown as your substitute. Can I do that? Chris, save me from this madness. No,
you can just keep your wallet locked away.
Oh, of course he's a thief. I don't want him anywhere near my stuff. Thanks. Half my Blu-ray collection will go missing if he's around. Do you know what? I agree with you in as far as if this is the best scene in the movie, it's certainly I would say it's certainly the most memorable scene. I think you have to see it. But it is irritating. I mean, it is. It's a long song, and look, I like progressive rock a lot, but I like it when it's done by people who are good at it. You know, like Genesis or Camel. Yeah, there's a band for you. I know that's a bit older than your taste, like Tom. I know you're into One Direction and all that, but
absolutely.
Who's your favourite, Harry or Barry or whatever?
Jeff.
Jeff, he's a good one. What about Marvin?
Love him.
Yeah. Jeff, that's my dad's name. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna kind of. I think I'm gonna back down from my statement and say that I don't think that the music particularly fits the scene, but it is a memorable scene, and I think you should see it. And I just find the song really annoying. That's all.
No, I can see that because it is just fucking repetitive. You know, they just keep doing that verse, that chorus, that verse, that chorus. So I've got no objections against the song if it sort of changed itself up a bit, you know.
Or even if they played like a couple of songs within the 7-minute period, you know. I mean, look, I'm a metal guy anyway, so it's not like the sound of it offends me. It just is so long for a song that only has a verse and a chorus to it. You know, like imagine if you took Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit, and then just doubled it and just had him singing the verse and the chorus for 10 minutes. It would annoy you, no matter how good the song is, you know. Anyway, I'm going to stop moaning on about that. But like you say, it's effective. It's certainly an effective chase scene, I think. Okay, so I think we've kind of covered most of it. Let's get towards the end of the plot now. We discover, of course, we're thinking at this point, or certainly the director, the writers, they want you to think that the killer might be Christopher George's character, and who is George Michaels, not the singer. And as it turns out, the killer is actually Kevin, who is Laura's boyfriend. Of course, Laura's the one who died during the race at the beginning of the movie. He is a psychopath. Did you? Now, you said that you sort of guessed who the killer was quite early on.
Yeah. It's not through any amazing detective work on my part. It's purely that certain things, like Scooby-Doo, early Scooby-Doo, have a certain kind of rhythm to them, in that a character will be introduced and then you don't really see them again. And admittedly, what was the girl's name? Anne? Anne is introduced in that way as well. But I never really suspected her, but Kevin I did, because we see him early on. He's got the perfect motive to want to do it, but then we don't really see him again until the guitar sing song. He's in that scene. He might be in more, but he doesn't really make an impression on me as such. So that's all it was. You know, I could have been completely wrong. It's not me being a smart arse. But yeah, it just seemed obvious to me.
Yeah, I mean, he does some horrendous harmonica miming during that sing-song scene. Yeah, I mean, once he popped up towards the end there, and he confronts Coach George. Basically, what happens is Coach George goes on the run because he's being accused the murders. One of the bodies of one of the girls, I can't remember which one it was, pops out of the locker. And they immediately think, well, it must be Coach George, of course, because he's the angriest one there by far. And so he runs away. Kevin catches up to him and confesses that he is in fact the killer. And unfortunately for Coach George, he almost wins the fight against Kevin. There's a detective who's been sort of hanging around for a while. He comes in, thinks that Coach George is about to kill Kevin, and that of course Coach George is the murderer, and shoots him dead. So Christopher George, bang, is out of the movie, and he'll be appearing in Pieces shortly thereafter, where he gives even less of a fuck. To be honest with you. And so we find out that Kevin is a killer. What did you think of him and his performance as an actor? He's Danny Murphy. What did you think of him?
Going back to that scene, I think they could have stretched out the kind of suspense of that, because it was a good sort of setup. You know, the coach knew who the killer was, but everyone else thought he was the killer. How are you going to convince everyone of that? You know, I think there should have been a bit more of a moment where he stood there saying, no, it's not me. It's, you know, I'm sort of played with that suspense a bit more. But saying that, Kevin the killer, he looks quite old to be going to high school, but that's par for the course with these kind of movies. He was a bit OTT, I thought. A bit broad in his performance. Not offensively so, because I don't expect that much of this film, I suppose. But yeah, a bit OTT, a bit broad.
I think for me, the most disappointing thing about it is that we suddenly have Anne coming into the picture again, who I think could have been an effective grounding lead character if it hadn't been for the fact that they just leave her out of most of it. So now we have her as the final girl, if you like, and she has to fight against Kevin. And of course, the way that she actually discovers that Kevin is the killer is she comes to his house, goes upstairs and finds the body of her sister sitting in a chair with the the graduation gown on, and of course that's slightly creepy. And of course Kevin is there waiting. I can't remember where he was. I think he was hiding somewhere in the room. And so I think that's an effective scene there, but I just think the whole thing, the way that it wraps up and everything, quite decent. Nothing to write home about. Kevin, as I say, played a decent psychopath, and Anne a decent leading lady in the scenes that she's actually in. But the way that it wraps up there, it's not going to blow your mind. It's fairly meat and potatoes, I think.
I do think that in that third act, it's almost like the film finds its feet and gets its shit together and sort of gets a bit of that momentum that I wish he had all the way through. You know, I was looking at my watch quite a lot during the midsection of the movie, but it comes together quite nicely, you know, and it closes down well. That is quite a creepy scene with the sister sitting there. And at one point, did I miss it? Did she stand up of her own, or did she sort of get tipped out of the chair by Anne by accident? I'm not quite sure how that went. But she pushes Kevin out the window, doesn't she?
Yeah, I think she gets tipped over by Anne. Yeah, I don't think she sort of stands up alive, although that would have been quite cool, actually, if she had. But yeah, I think Anne pushes the chair and then she falls out the window with Kevin. But that's not the end of it, because Kevin is up and about quite quickly.
Of course, wouldn't be a slasher movie if he wasn't.
I was going to say it's a decent enough chase, but he catches up to her extraordinarily quickly. I mean, by the time she actually makes it to, Anne runs away from Kevin as far as she can, and he's not giving chase behind her, but he's sort of there when she gets there, which I don't really understand. Like it's one of those things. It's kind of like what they did with Jason in Part 8, when he can just turn up wherever he pleases. Which is one of the things I don't like about that movie. I know it's a strange comparison to make, but it's like in Part 8, Jason can apparently teleport. Like there's one point where one of the characters is climbing up this huge metal pole to get away from Jason, who's on the ground. And when he gets near the top of the pole, Jason is on top of the pole. How the fuck did that happen? You know. So he seems to get there extraordinarily quickly, but it's quite a decent fight, isn't it, at the end between the two of them?
Yeah, it wraps up quite nicely. I guess it's slasher movie logic. It happens from time to time. I think they're so concerned with giving you the surprise, they forget to think about the logic sometimes, and that's probably what happened here.
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, meat and potatoes. But I have to say, I think this film is it's better than Final Exam. It sags in the middle, like you said. There's really nothing you've said apart from your love of Felony, the band. There's really nothing you said that I can disagree with. It's a fairly forgettable thing. I'm quite surprised. I mean, both of us watched a Blu-ray copy of this, which has just been released by 88 Films, and it's apparently it's a 4K restoration. Now, I don't mean this in any bad way, because I love bad horror movies as much as anybody else. But who the hell thought it was a good idea to give this a 4K restoration? Bearing in mind that, I think it was last year, I bought Jaws on Blu-ray. Now, I can understand giving Jaws a 4K restoration, or Blade Runner, but Graduation Day, does that not seem a bit baffling to you?
It's a funny one, isn't it? I don't know. It's nice that people are given these cult films this treatment, and we're quite spoiled at the moment, aren't we, for this kind of thing? But yeah, it is a bizarre one.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm incredibly grateful. I mean, what Arrow Video have done, what 88 Films are now doing, what's the name of the company that released the Cannibal Holocaust thing recently? Shameless. What all these companies are doing really is they're making Vipco, which is one of the companies who are going to come up a few times, I think, during the run of this podcast, the history of it. I think what they're doing is really shaming Vipco, who didn't care, who, to their credit, released a lot of uncut horror movies over the years, but really didn't care that much about the print quality. Whereas these companies, Arrow, Shameless, 88 Films, in America we've got Synapse, we've got Blue Underground. What all these companies are doing is really giving horror the treatment it deserves. And when I'm talking about the 4K restoration of this, of course I don't mean it badly. I think it's wonderful that any horror film that is loved by people is getting some sort of good treatment. It just is surprising to me that anybody thought this film deserved it to begin with.
I know. I think in the pantheon of the other slashers, this seems to have a little bit of respect, it seems, especially when you compare it to the likes of Final Exam, which has none, but even that got put on Blu-ray, so what do I know? But yeah, Graduation Day, I think, is a name that I've known, so it seems to have a little bit of cachet for some reason, so I guess it's enough that people want to have that.
Well, it might be because Final Exam really is a nothing film. It was, I to be honest with you, I don't know much about the history of it in its release, but what I do know is that, this film was produced by Troma Entertainment for Columbia Pictures. Troma always has, the Troma quality and feel. The film wasn't made by Troma; it's not one of theirs, but they produced it, and they ended up releasing it on DVD some years later. It was made on a budget of $250,000, and it recouped this budget and then some, making $23 million at the US box office, which is
wow.
It seems to have made a bit of money. I think maybe that's why it has a bit more respect. It was more successful than something like Final Exam. It actually, even though I think to you and I it seems like quite a mediocre slasher, it did seem to have a little bit of success attached to it. I do want to say one quick thing, by the way. We were talking about the Blu-ray release from 88 Films. We're not, part of this show is not for us to sit and talk about new releases or anything like that. Part of the show is not to sit here and, give plugs to companies because they're sending us stuff, because they haven't. Tom and I bought the Blu-ray individually with our own money. But the release, it's good. The film looks good, I think. Certainly decent. I found that there was an annoying buzz through the movie. Was that just me, or did you hear that as well?
I didn't notice it, but I'll look out for it.
I was doing some reading online. It seems like that's inherent to the print. But there's some extras on there. There's some Troma stuff that was pulled off the DVD, like a Troma filmmaking class. There's Cannibal Lesbian Hoedown, which is nonsense. But if you want to see boobies, I know you do, Tom. You're that sort, aren't you? So you can pop on there and twiddle your knob and all that. But really, to me, the star feature of this is there's this feature-length documentary on there. And it's called Scream Queens, Horror Heroines Exposed. It's hosted by Debbie Rochon, and it features a strong selection of classic Scream Queens and newcomers, including Lanai Quigley, Michelle Bauer, Sybil Danning, Brink Stevens, Lisa Wilcox from Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5, and many more. And I think it's made by High Rising Productions. And I think you and I both know, this is Callum Waddle, isn't it? And
That's right.
Naomi Hollowell, is it? Is that right? And they do. I think they do pretty much all the extras on the Arrow video releases, and they've done the one on here, this documentary. I think they do a fantastic job with these special features. I commented on Twitter the other day that I actually think it could have had its own release quite easily. I think they could have made. I think they could still. I guess they're contracted, so therefore they can't do it. But I think they could easily make like an extended cut of that documentary, stick it on Blu-ray with extras, stuff that's cut out, and I think people would absolutely lap it up. I think that the guys behind there, Callum, I think that they're horror fans. Yeah, if you want to see the film, see the film. But if you buy the Blu-ray for nothing else, buy it for that Scream Queens extra, because it really sheds some great positive light on some of the classic Scream Queens, some of the up and coming ones. There are a couple of girls in there who are mighty tasty. They'll soon be approved by Mr. Tom Elliott. He'll let you know which one comes up top on the wank meter, and and you can decide from there. But yeah, it's a really good release.
So there we go. That's us for another couple of films, 2 slashers with a school theme. So we've got an email off Chris Ward, haven't we?
Yes, he's an old friend, an old associate, somebody who used to listen to my show, Gore Boy Radio, which was the old show I used to do many years ago. And there'll be some news about that soon, by the way, folks. Talk about that in a sec. But yes, Chris Ward. I've always liked the guy. He's a big horror fan like us. He's also a big heavy metal fan like me. I'm a big old metal man, and he is as well. And we share a lot of that in common. And was out of touch for a while. I was off the scene, and he's written into us now. So I'm gonna read this email that he sent from Mr. Chris Ward. So, he says, "Hi guys, Chris Ward here, aka Horrorsmith," that's his name on Twitter. "Been a long time since I wrote either of you an email, but I'm very glad to be doing so, as it means that you're back on the podcasting airwaves and filling the sizable hole left by your former shows, of which I will take this opportunity to say thanks for, as I was going through a shitty time in my life at that point, and your audio delights and personal correspondence helped see me through some dark days. But that was then, and this is now, and it's wonderful to hear you both back and discussing some films that are part of a subject very close to my heart, namely the Section 3 list movies. I really enjoyed your first show, as I'm a fan of cannibal films, and own both the ones you talked about. However, I do agree with Tom's comment of where do you go from Cannibal Holocaust, and this is pretty much the ultimate example of the subgenre, and there's probably only 1 or 2 possibly decent stories you can tell. Nevertheless, there are some good ones other than the ones you spoke of, namely Mountain of the Cannibal God, Cannibal Ferox, and I even enjoy Emmanuel and the Last Cannibals for obvious reasons. He's a dirty bastard. I haven't yet seen The Green Inferno, but I've heard some mixed reports. Any of you guys seen it? Anyway, I'm looking forward to your future discussions of Christmas Evil, Graduation Day, Friday the 13th 1 and 2, The Hills Have Eyes, Foxy Brown, Phantasm, Extro, love it, he says, and the original film in my franchise of choice, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a film I could waffle on about for weeks without pausing for breath. You're a man after my own heart, Chris. By the way, Chris, he's talking to me, we're both named Chris, it's confusing, I know. You never quoted my line of, the midget Dario Argento lookalike just fingered his mum, in reference to Burial Ground, like you promised. I'll let you explain that one to Tom. Regards, Chris Ward, freelance reviews writer, and he's linked to his blog there, but we don't want to mention that. His reviews blog is www.ancientslumber.wordpress.com, so you can go there and comment on his writings. So that is our email from Chris Ward. We've got a couple of things in there, Tom, a couple of questions for us. Let me see what he... Well, first of all, he mentions that he was going through a bad time in his life at the time when I was around doing the Gore Boy radio show, and of course you were around doing Gentleman's Grindhouse. I can relate to that. In fact, the reason I left Gore Boy radio behind was because I was going through an absolutely awful time. I needed to get away from it and recharge. I'm a lot happier now than I was back then, so... still going through a rough time. I won't say why this year, but it's been a hard time for me. But I'm glad that we were able to help you get through it.
Me too. I appreciate those words. I think you don't often think of who is out there listening to your podcast. I always like to hear from people, to at least put some sort of voice or face to kind of who is out there. But I enjoy podcasts a lot, and I think it's just taking time out for me, taking time out to listen to a podcast that someone's put together for free for me to enjoy. It does mean a lot. So if he got that from us and our podcast, then that's great. Thank you, Chris.
You asked, have we seen The Green Inferno? I have not. Have you, Tom?
I have not either. Probably be a Netflix for me, to be honest. I'm not a huge Roth fan.
Oh, that's an Eli Roth film, is it? Yeah, I'm not that keen on him. So I probably... Is that his love letter to Cannibal Holocaust? I think I'd heard about that.
It is, yeah, because isn't there that excised scene from Cannibal Holocaust called The Green Inferno or something?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember.
I have seen Cannibal Ferox. In fact, I own... It's weird because I don't like the movie, but I own 2 copies of it. I own a limited edition tin of it, a metal tin, and then a Dutch copy of it. So I don't know why I own 2 copies of it, because I don't like it that much, but I have seen that one. But no Green Inferno for us. You mentioned some of the other films we're going to cover there. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Not to spoil too much for you, but if you're looking forward to us discussing Christmas Evil, you might want to look for it in December, because it might be happening then. Now, the final thing in this email, we've got to move on, Chris. You've taken up so much of our time, Chris. He says there, you never quoted my line of the midget Dario Argento lookalike just fingered his mum. And I have to explain it to you, Tom. To be quite honest with you, I can't really remember that much about it. Basically, I was having a Twitter conversation with Chris Ward. I sort of recommended Burial Ground to him, and he was going to watch it. And there's somebody, some little midget-looking dude, some small person, I should say, to be politically correct, who looked like Dario Argento. And apparently, during the scene, he fingered his mum. Right? It's a perfectly natural thing to do, Tom. Not to your mother, but it's a perfectly natural thing to do. I don't know about you. And I just thought it was quite funny that I was looking at my Twitter feed and this random thing comes up from Chris Ward saying the midget Dario Argento lookalike just fingered his mum, because it's something stupid like I would have said. That's what it is.
That's I think 88 Films are bringing that out on Blu-ray.
What, the midget Dario Argento lookalike just fingered his mum?
Yeah, I think that's the alternate title.
Oh, brilliant.
But yeah, no, Burial Ground.
Imagine if Dario Argento was in a porno with that face of his. Anyway, so that's that. But yes, so I was actually going to... The reason I didn't mention it, Chris, in the first episode, I was going to bring it up in the Argento episode, but without giving anything away, the Argento episode is not happening for a long time. So there you go. I've explained it now, so you can shush. Thanks, Chris, for your feedback. And Tom, I believe you have something there.
I do. I will just hit play on this. It's a clip from our old friend Chris Brown.
Steve.
Let's hear what he's got to say.
Gentlemen, Christopher Brown here, journalist, author, and raconteur. I wish to speak to you today not about the comments made on episode 1 of your podcast. Indeed, my solicitors will be in touch about that. No, I'm here to discuss the 2 films you're talking about today: Final Exam and Graduation Day. I believe I may have seen these films before, although they are lodged in my mind somewhere under slasher films from the 80s that I kind of remember. So I rewatched them this afternoon on a wet and windy Saturday. And I can understand now why they kind of fit into that section of the mind, which is episodes of Inspector Morse you think you might have watched. Generic, I suppose, is the easiest way to call them both. Graduation Day was actually a massive success and made lots of money for Troma and Columbia Pictures. And Final Exam is a surprisingly bloodless affair which commits the cardinal sin of not actually letting you see the kills. But generally, the thing that struck me by watching them was exactly how many tropes both these films managed to shoehorn in. Graduation Day effectively seems to cover everything from the final girl trope right the way through, including false scares and pretty much and even a black gloved killer, and even an element where the whodunit element as well. I think it's interesting. I mean, from my own experience of the Video Nasties podcast, that obviously at the time these films were picked up, and there was a huge amount of slashers floating around. It was right at the heart of the slasher boom, and because of that boom, the number of films is absolutely boggling, really. So it's not surprising that you have to go through a lot of them, and it's not surprising they feel a very strict template. I mean, there is generic, and then there is graduation days ideas. It even features an almost like a holiday feast in its title. Graduation Day is a little bit better than, Eli Roth's Thanksgiving trailer or something like that. I'll be honest to you. I'm not a fan of slashers. And I find it quite interesting that competence is always the thing that we go back to when we speak about them. Haunted house or ghost stories must be scary. Splatter films must be over the top. But slashers seem to at least kind of get the biggest free pass if they just tick all the right boxes and fulfill the model. And in that way, these two films do. They are considerably better than some of the examples that are on the Nasties list. And this is a lot better, for example, than Night School, also known as Terrorize. And as such, they are suitably entertaining Friday night films, if not much else. And although to our more modern eyes, they are not quite, they're pretty obvious in what they set out to do, they still seem to have a certain charm to them. Probably best viewed in a slightly grainier format, maybe in a divey cinema with it being slightly out of focus, rather than in the crystal clarity that Blu-ray now offers us. Anyway, gents, thank you very much, and I will see you in court. Take care. Goodbye.
So that's feedback there from Mr. Chris Brown. We always like to hear from you. Tom, do you think he has solicitors at his disposal?
I think he's bluffing.
I just want to say, Chris Brown, the brownest of Chris's. I all that stuff that I said in the first episode was all Tom, who made me do that. He threatened me with violence and sex, and I just want to apologise for that. Please don't get any lawyers involved. I'm very poor. I don't have much money. My family is on the streets now, and Chris, you got to help me out, please. Please take Tom down. Don't take me down with him, please.
So Chris talks about how people let slashers off with a lot that they might not let other movies get away with. Slashers are allowed to be mediocre. Do you agree?
I don't know if I do agree. I noticed there from the clip that Chris is not a huge fan of slashers. I mean, there. I suppose there are elements of what he said that I do agree with. But I think the same could be said of zombie movies. I think there are just as many of those that are made, and I think that people can be just as sloppy with those too. I don't think it's necessarily just slashers, but it does happen. It absolutely does happen.
I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier on, where slashers seem to occupy this space as cinematic junk food. You want a bit of fun, you throw a slasher on. You don't want to think about it, you throw a slasher on. And I think filmmakers probably have picked up on that. I'll tell you what, let's throw a bit of blood around, throw some boobs in there, bang, we've got a slasher. So I agree in some respects, but I also think that if you look these days at the amount of successful slashers, and people are always trying to create new slasher icons, and they almost always fail, because I think it's harder to do now, because the icons are already set. So that kind of shows you how difficult it actually is. I think we're in a bit of a muddy time for the slasher. I think it does need a bit of a kick up the arse. Something needs to happen to whether it's a new icon or a new Friday the 13th film that's actually good and kicks some arse, you know. But yeah, I think we're in a bit of a bad period for slashers at the moment.
Maybe it goes back to what you were saying. It feels like they're very much popcorn movies. They're junk food. It's the junk food of the horror world, I think.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for the feedback, Chris. Always appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Chris. And please don't sue us, because we need all the money we can get so we can finish doing this show. After that, you know, come what may. I'll probably pack up my suitcase, put my Hawaiian shirt on, and bugger off to Urukapisai, and I'll spend the rest of my life there.
Okay, so I think it's about time we wrap this thing up.
We've done it, Tom. We've crossed off 6 films on our list so far. How do you think we've done?
I think we've done okay. I've enjoyed it. I think we've got a lot more obscure stuff coming up that I'm looking forward to discovering. And I think the next show is going to be one of those shows, maybe.
Absolutely. Before we get to that, I should say, in the past 2 episodes, we've mentioned a few times that we were going to put together themed episodes, really until we found that we'd run out of them. Now, what we've done between us, Tom has rather brilliantly paired up as many of the films as possible. What we found is that we actually have themes for all of them, except for there are 4 films in the list that we don't have a way to put together as a double bill for each pairing. So what we've done is that Tom paired them together, and I went through and I made an episode schedule for all of our Section 3 related episodes. We want to get that out of the way first and see how we get on after that. So we've actually got everything planned out now, all the episode dates and everything. Obviously, they're going to be jigged around a bit as time goes on, depending on what happens in our lives. But we've got everything planned and ready to go. It's going to take us up until the middle of 2016. And what we wanted to do very early on in the life of the show was try and get 2 of these movies that don't really fit anywhere else out of the way. So we can get those out of the way, and then we can carry on enjoying our themes. So we've got 2 films for the next episode that don't have a theme. Do you want to tell the people listening at home what those films are, Tom?
I do. We've got 2 films, and the first one is called Brutes and Savages, which I believe is kind of like a Mondo movie. Mm-hmm. And also one called Pigs. Now you could say, well, you could put Brutes and Savages with a cannibal film, and yes, of course you could, but the cannibal films are already spoken for. And you could say, well, Pigs has got a female killer in it. You could put it with another female killer film. Well, of course you could, but they're already paired up in their own ways as well. So we couldn't just keep looking, otherwise we'd have went insane. So we just thought, you know what, let's put these 2 together. We'll get them out the way early. And it's a bit of a mismatch, but I'm sure some pigs probably get killed in Brutes and Savages, so you never know.
The rest of the shows are all going to be themed. We've even got themed months, actually, where we've got a certain theme that we're going to carry through for both episodes that come out that month. So we've got a lot of good stuff that's planned, a lot of variation, I think, as well, Tom. There's really a lot of, it's a good mix. It's not just 20 films that are slashers. There's a nice broad range of things there.
So if you want to know what's coming up, we've always given out the web address as strangeanddeadly.com, and that will take you straight to our website where the podcast is. Now, the way it actually works is the podcast, The Strange and Deadly Show, is part of, I guess you could call it a kind of podcast network, because we're sort of building up a little body of podcasts on the website. And the kind of parent website is Gentleman's Grindhouse Records. Now, if you just go to the web address strangeanddeadly.com and go to the top left, there's a little drop down there, and you will see it say Strange and Deadly Show Index. Now, I've listed the first 10 shows so far. I will add to it as we go on, so you can see what's coming up in the future ahead. So have a look. If there's something you want to comment on, then send us some feedback at strangeanddeadly.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely, and don't forget, listen out next month for our first music release on Gentleman's Grindhouse Records. It's Mr. Tom Elliott doing a cover of Des O'Connor's Dick a Dum Dum, and he'll be on there, going down to Old King's Road to find himself a nice dolly bad.
Absolutely.
Yes, and speaking seriously, he's done Dark Ink, the Darkest of Inks, has done a tremendous job on the website. It looks really cool, actually. It looks really slick. And like Tom said, you can see on there's a list of the first 10 shows, what's coming up. So if you look at that list, anything you want to talk to us about, bear in mind, if you want to email us about show number 10, that's not going to be till next year. So bear that in mind. But if you want to talk about the next episode, you can send us feedback, tell us how great we are, both of us, this time. I'm not going to call you mediocre again, Tom. I felt bad about that.
That's all right.
Because you're not mediocre. You're decent. But no, he's a great man. But, but so say nice things. Talk about the films that we're going to be talking about next, as long as you get them in on time. And we'd absolutely love to hear from you.
Great. Just a quick one before we go. We got our first iTunes review on the US iTunes.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it's from someone called Dr. Roboculus, and he put in the title, knocked it out of the park with the show artwork. Totally agree, Dark Ink 1. And he puts in the review, great to have the two of you guys back and together. So someone who's been privy to our previous work. So thank you, Dr. Roboculus, and I hope we can get some more iTunes reviews. It really kind of helps get the word out.
Hiding behind a name there, Tom. An identity. Dr. Roboculus. Dr. what? Dr. Roboculus?
That's it.
My goodness. I wonder who that is, Tom.
I wonder.
Thank you very much for the review. Please carry on leaving them. Yeah, leave 5-star reviews if you can, assuming you actually like the show. Like Tom said, it helps get the word out about us, and word of mouth is what we're going for. We're not trying to be rich here, folks. We're just trying to have a good time. And thank you very much for listening to the previous 2 downloads. Well, previous 2 episodes, rather. And thank you very much for listening to this one, when you can get around to doing it.
Good. Okay, well, that's all from us, and we will see you next time on the Strange and Deadly Show.
Yeah, get your ass out of here. Bye.
Bye.
Are you ready for a good time? I know I am, and I know my friend is too. Well, I'm Chris Clayton.
And I'm Tom Elliott. Oh, fuck, sorry. I thought you were going to pass on to me.
No, sorry. I was just rambling away.
No, carry on, go on.
Where did I leave off?
I'm Chris Clayton. Yeah. Gamma Delta, the big fuck.
The big fuck.
Fucking was.
Yeah. I really enjoyed your first show, as I'm a fan of cannibal films and own both the ones you talked about. However, I do agree with Tom's comment of where do you go from Cannibal Holocaust, as it is pretty much the ultimate example. Let me try that again. I really enjoyed your... See, I knew I was going to get held up on something. I really enjoyed your first show, as I'm a fan of cannibal films and own both the ones you talked about. However, I do agree with Tom's comment of where do you go from Cannibal Holocaust, as it is pretty much the ultimate example of the subgenre, and there's probably only 1 or 2 possibly decent stories you can tell. Nevertheless, there are some good ones other than the ones you spoke of, namely Mountain of the Cannibal... I hate myself. Sorry, mate. I'm going to go back from I really enjoyed your first show again. I don't know. Let me have a drop of water. I'm not putting any of this in the bloopers. You put all my fuck-ups in the bloopers, you bastard. By the way.
That's because yours are the funny ones. Mine weren't funny.
No, I probably will end up putting mine in there as well. It's good. Embarrass myself.